Hello, I'm Tokat and welcome back to the second channel geography video. This is a series where I talk about geography and the world and stuff. And today I wanted to talk about borders again because I find them fascinating and because I wanted to continue on my series where I talk about every border that a country does have. And today we're going to be addressing Romania. So Romania is a very interesting example of an Eastern European country, which of course they are. And interestingly enough, they're actually the easternmost point of the continuous EU. But Romania is a really interesting example of an Eastern European country because it follows the very traditional story of like, well, guess what? They're in this part of Europe, so the Soviets came in the late 1940s. They, held some fake elections where, surprise, surprise, the communists won. Communist Party eventually leads to a communist dictatorship. Communist dictatorship does some good things, mostly bad things, and eventually when they transition into being, eventually at the end of the Cold War, when they transition into democracy, unlike the rest of Eastern Europe, which has some struggles, which has some integration problems, Romania just leads the way and becomes one of the tigers of Eastern Europe. For some reason, the way the world describes fast-growing economically countries is as a tiger, but it becomes one of the tigers of Eastern Europe. It grows one of the fastest rates in Europe as a whole, and it does very, very well. It gets involved in some scandals here and there, but it basically, leads to being one of the, best performing countries in Europe, and part of that reason is that it has very good relations with all of its neighbors. And even though it has, a lot of neighbors, and it has good relationships with most of those neighbors, it has the very interesting situation where of the 5 neighbors it has to this day, Bulgaria, Serbia, Hungary, Ukraine, Moldova, in case you are curious, and then Ukraine again for 6 separate borders, but although it has the interesting situation of sharing 5 neighbors, 3 of those neighbors have changed in the last, 30 years. So, in case you're curious, it used to border Yugoslavia over here, now it borders Serbia, and it used to border the USSR, and now it borders Moldova and Ukraine instead, of course, both previously being, SSRs in the USSR. But yeah, very interesting situation where Romania has changed its leadership in those last 30 years as well, so has Hungary, so has Bulgaria, and basically it's in a very fast-changing part of the world, but it manages to adapt and be part of that, even though, again, scandals and funny issues like that. And there's also one thing I want to call out Romania for, and that's for having a flag, because, we like to talk about flags here a little bit, and that's for having the flag which is basically the same as Chad. So here's the flag of Romania. No, wait, here is the flag of Chad. See how you can even tell that? So yeah, this is the flag of, Chad right here. This is the flag of Romania. Can you see a difference? No, you probably can't. So there technically is a difference because, the color hue is slightly off, but for some reason, Romania and Chad just have the exact same flag, and the reasons, entirely parallel. It's not like, oh yeah, Chad was just trying to copy Romania, or Romania was copying Chad, but it's still one of those annoying things because, you're in Russia, you see one of those flags, and you're like, is that a Romanian tourist group or a Chad tourist group? You just have no idea who it is until you ask them personally. So anyway, no, in all seriousness, they do actually have a very similar flag to Romania, to Chad, and also they have a similar flag to France. You might notice, again, blue, yellow, red instead of blue, white, red, and that's actually because for some reason Romania has a lot of their stuff based in France, including their constitution was based on the French Fifth Republic one, because they thought, that's a good system to be based on. And also, interestingly enough to me, is the fact that a lot of Romanians speak French. Their English fluency is high. Again, I know quite a few Romanians, because there's a high number of Romanians in the UK, but also they speak a lot of French too. So yeah, good with languages, which is good for business, and part of the reason they grow so fast, and bad with flags though. Sorry, you gotta pick a different one to Chad, or maybe get Chad to change. I'm just saying. They also have a similar flag to Moldova, by the way, which brings us into the first of our border situations we're going to talk about, because Moldova and Romania have a similar flag, but this time it's for, actually related reasons. So the interesting thing about the 5 borders, because usually I go clockwise or counterclockwise, but I think we have to start with Romania and Moldova's, border and relations, because the truth is Romanians don't really see this as a border. They see it as a very artificial thing, because the territorial shape of Romania as a whole has changed a lot in the last, even just last century. So again, Romanians have had a lot of tough times during, both the Cold War, but also during the 2 World Wars, where they started on different sides to the one they ended. Again, weird Romanian stuff, but basically it meant that their, territorial shape has changed a bunch during that time. So here you can see Greater Romania, with the largest country shape it ever had, was up until 1940 and included a lot of modern-day Ukraine and even all of Moldova. So yeah, Moldova was kind of formed by the Russians, again, after that whole thing, to kind of create a part of, Romania that could be theirs, because they had a deep interest in the region. So again, they took this region right here. Bessarabia is what it's historically known as. Maybe you recognize that name. Basically, it's something the Russians have tried to take many, many, many times. During just the 19th century alone, they took it 5 separate times from the Ottomans, and then lost it again, and then took it again 5 separate times. Basically, they really wanted access to the Danube River, which is accessed right here, and also by Moldova, because by the way, the Danube River, which they took right here, is the Romanian borders. 4 of them are shaped by the Danube in some way. So there's a fun little fact. This one river is just like a huge part of their borders. But anyway, let's talk about the Moldova situation, because that's kind of how the Russians took it, why they took it, and they made Moldovans from being mostly Romanian-based people, even though they had historically their own kind of nation, they had a lot of similarities with Romania. They kind of tried to make them their own national identity. They made it an SSR and the USSR, and they also, you know, gave them a new Russian-style like Cyrillic script that was different to the Romanian one. So again, here you can see like, oh yeah, so everything to this day in Moldova is still very Cyrillic, and the policies they pursue are very, very weird, because the truth is Moldova, when they went independent, they wanted to join up with Romania. However, the popular support in their country just isn't quite there. Like, whereas most Romanians don't really see this as a border, they see Moldova as just being that long-lost part of Romania. A lot of Moldovans don't see it that way. They see Moldova now, at least the young generation, is like, oh yeah, it's its own unique thing. And given there is a lot of pro-Russian separatism, because, you know, Moldova is like the long-lost part of Romania, well, Moldova has its own like situation developing like that, where Transnistria, the side of the Dnieper River, Dniester River, sorry, the other side of that, so again, in the same way that the Romania border and Moldova border is formed by the Prot River, which looks like this right here, as you can see. The border between Moldova and Transnistria is shaped by this river, where they have the same issue, where like, oh yeah, they need to keep this country together because people they see as Moldovans see themselves as Transnistria. It's basically just like, you know, like countries all the way down, and at least this very interesting situation where Moldova, even though at first they were very friendly to the idea of eventually merging with Romania, nowadays it's just not a popular idea because they have to deal with their own stuff, and it leads to the situation where Moldova, because they're so unfriendly to the outside world, again, even including their neighbors, they're the poorest country in Europe by GDP per person, and it doesn't really look like it's changing too soon because they have a bunch of corruption issues. Something like, you know, 1/8 of their GDP was just lost, stolen from some, you know, suspicious place. Like, again, so much just, how does that even happen in any country? It happened in Moldova, and yeah, it's just one of these countries where they have some issues getting off the ground, and also where they don't really see themselves as Romanians, despite Romanians seeing this as being them. So yeah, their border is like, they have some friendly-ish relations, and, you know, Romania tries to be friendly, but Moldova generally doesn't want to be friendly back, and that's just kind of the situation with Romania. So there you go, there's Romania and Moldova explained. They're probably going to stay independent. It's probably more in Moldova's interest to join Romania than it is Romania's, but again, Moldovans don't want it, Moldovans have their own issue, so they're not going to do that realistically. At least the situation where eventually the two peoples will diverge, and you will just have like a Moldovan people and a Romanian people. So yeah, you're kind of seeing in live action the creation of a people group, or at least the finishing of a creation of a people group, where despite them having a lot of similarities, the differences are being used to push them apart, which is quite interesting if you ask me. So yeah, there's Moldova, a country which is, it's in that awkward place in Europe, but still manages to be okay. So yeah, Moldova and Romania both border Ukraine. Ukraine, by the way, again, I mentioned how it was, this part of it was kind of just like, oh yeah, the Russians wanted it for access to the Danube, and obviously given the USSR doesn't exist, now it just belongs to the Ukraine, but it's in, to Ukraine. The Ukraine is technically offensive. So now it belongs to Ukraine, but it's in, again, this area right here is in this very weird situation where, even though, again, so the border between Romania and this is decided by the Danube. Even though this part right here, even though it is technically Ukraine, and even though there's like some stuff going on, there's a fairly large city right here on the Danube. The truth is it's not connected to the rest of Ukraine very well at all. Like seriously, look how thin the link is between Ukraine and the other part of Ukraine, like without going through Moldova. There's like pretty much a huge bridge here, and then there's like a thing over here technically, but that's about it. So yeah, the two countries are connected in a very, or the two parts of the country connected in a very weird way, and although it is Ukraine and it's going to stay Ukraine, it's just one of these weird situations where you can see how arbitrary the borders in Europe can be decided, because like seriously, look at what's going on right here. But no, we're talking about Romania mostly right here, so just fun little fact, this area right here, part of Bessarabia now belongs to Ukraine, and they do have some success in here, and also, interestingly enough, the end of their border, because again, we're going to follow it all the way to the end now, actually ends up in the Black Sea, but in the Black Sea there is an island that I did not see, like you can't see until you get really, really, really close to their border. Like seriously, even at this angle, can you see an island in the Black Sea? No, there's no islands in the Black Sea besides, like, I mean, is Crimea an island? No, it's a peninsula. But yeah, the crazy thing about of course, the Black Sea is the fact that just at the border right here, you can see how there's a very, 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 very tiny island right here. So this island is called Snake Island. About 100 people live there. You can't see any satellite imagery of the thing. Like, again, this is what it looks like. You can't see what's going on there, but apparently 100 people live there. It's a huge financial burden for Ukraine, and they've stopped sending money, so that people are like having issues. And it's just one of these weird situations of like, wait, there's an island there, and it's called Snake Island, and we don't really know what's going on. It's just one of those cool mysteries that kind of defines the edge of the border between Romania and Ukraine, because of course they have territorial waters that go out to there. And yeah, just interesting stuff. Romania and the coastline is not a good situation, but what is a good situation is the rest of their border with Ukraine. Or rather, actually, I'd say it's a good situation if you like bad borders, which I guess we do in this series, because the truth is their border with Ukraine, partly defined by the Prut River again. Again, you can see just how badly drawn it actually is, because it's the same thing with Moldova, where again the river's meant to be the defining border boundary, but they set the boundary as being like based on where it was when they drew the treaty. So of course, since they drew the treaty about where their border is, same thing right here, it's changed massively. The thinner the river, the more likely it is to change, because although the Danube is like one of the huge, one of the widest rivers you actually have, look how wide this thing is right here. It means that it's not too big for deal, like mostly it stays on the right side. The truth is the Prut River has the exact opposite situation. It's really, really thin, so the river's changing course so frequently. So you have Romanian lands on the Ukrainian sides, Ukrainian lands on the Romanian sides, and although neither side is really claiming those lands, like seriously, look at this, like this is technically Ukraine's forest now, like Ukraine has full ownership. It just leaves this weird situation where, again, eventually, like a full-on house is going to end up in a wrong country, and what do you do then? And I guess they're just going to deal with it when they come to it. But still, interesting stuff you see right here that gets even worse if we follow the border even further along, because if you look at, again, look at the border between Romania and Ukraine, it's pretty straight, it's pretty straightforward, like, oh yeah, they go point to point based on where the people live, pretty logical stuff for a border to do, until it reaches, again, look at this point right here, a really, really tiny river called the Bilka Mik River, where because the river is so small, none of the border is now on the back then river. So you have this weird situation where Ukraine owns some lands on the wrong side of it, but like, what's really going to go on with that? Well, guess what? It's a forest, so I guess we don't deal with that. So yeah, I don't know. I just think it's interesting. The borders between Romania and Ukraine, because it's mostly not been ironed out, it's fairly good in places and it's fairly useful in places, but it's also really, really weird in others. It has a bunch of just like weird pokey out points and like it just doesn't follow rivers precisely. Look at this right here. It's basically what I'm saying is their border's a bit of a mess, and it ends up in weird situations like this, where some of the Ukrainian road is owned by Romania, and like, is that an issue? I mean, not really, but like, it's funny regardless. So again, at some point soon, you'll see their border being sorted out, but until they sort out their border, you just kind of have this weird situation instead. So let's move on from that, because the Ukrainian-Romanian border, again, I could point this out time and time again, just it's non-stop river after river after river, where they have issue after issue after issue, but again, they'll sort that sometime, I hope at least. But let's instead talk about where their border meets the tri-point with Hungary, Romania, and Ukraine. So this is the border right here, because again, that used to be on water, now it's on land, so I guess that's one little fun fact. And someone recently asked me actually why I found tri-points to be so fascinating, but the truth is you only find them so often in continents with a high country density. For instance, in the US has no tri-point border, at least on their mainland. For instance, it's not a common thing unless you have like really small countries. So again, people say like every country has tri-points, but no, not necessarily. Also, accidentally clicked a thing there. But yeah, let's talk about the tri-point right here. If you want to see 3 countries at once, you can. It's actually technically a border crossing too, as you can see. I mean, I don't know why you would cross there, and I don't think it's like meant to be crossed, but it technically is a border crossing point, so there you go, fun fact. And it's where the Romanian-Ukrainian border becomes the Romanian-Hungarian border. So their border's done a little bit better. So the thing about Romania and Hungary is they actually have really warm relationships outwardly, but they have the opposite of most countries, where it's like, oh yeah, outwardly very cold, gotta be, cold and negotiate about it, but like they secretly kind of love each other. It's kind of the opposite, where outwardly Romania and Hungary are like, yeah, we're best friends, but then they're like, don't really like each other a little bit. Like cold behind the warm is a phrase I've heard quite a bit, because the truth is that the relations between the two countries, they need to be friendly, because there's a lot of Romanians in Hungary, or at least a fair number, and there's a lot of Hungarians in Romania. Hungary even helped Romania against the EU, but the truth is they have like a lot of deep rivalries, and because of that they have some issues with dealing with stuff like this. So again, same kind of issue where like they still to this day have border checks, because Romania is not in Schengen. So even if we look Okay, we have to just zoom in like this. You can see how there's like a full-on border crossing point where Romania checks when you leave, Hungary checks when you join. Messy stuff like that, as you can probably imagine. And yeah, there's quite a few of those. There's like 15 separate border crossings, including a couple of rail ones. But the most interesting points to me are the points where the border gets weird. Because, again, settling a border between two countries with a very mixed population, it's going to lead to some issues. And some of those issues look like this on the map. So, yeah, if we look over here, you can see how this part right here is just like a field that like had to stay Hungarian. So you can see the distinct difference between where Hungary ends and like where Romania begins, just because of how different like their farming stuff looks. So there's a fun thing for you. And then just, you know, behind that, you can see how like this road, again, crosses right through there. Basically trying to, you know, like set up like border crossings on a thing like this, it gets really, really tricky. So here you can see Romanian road has to like curve just to meet the border. So again, the border should be going straight there, but it doesn't. And that means that, interesting enough, again, even though the Romanian-Hungarian border, it's fully staffed, you're meant to be checked every time, they're meant to look at your passport, say, yes, EU citizen, let you through. You can technically, if you wanted to take a shortcut on this road, again, not recommending this, but if you wanted to do an illegal border crossing in Europe, here's the easiest one for you. You can take a shortcut, you know, from here to there. Just save yourself a bit of time in that road. Take a shortcut across there, and if you do take a shortcut across there, you'll technically have been in Hungary for a little bit. And I guess if you like, because there's like a farming road, wait, if we go back, because there's like a little farmer's road right here, you could technically go through Hungary quite well that way. Again, I'm not saying that's not legal and you shouldn't do it, but it's kind of cool that you could, right? I think so. Again, I'm not recommending it anyway, I just think it's kind of cool. So anyway, that said, there's a lot of points like that where like the border and the roads around it have to kind of follow each other to like meet that to make sense. Which, I mean, it's nice of them to follow their border so closely. I mean, I guess they kind of have to. And that kind of just shows the example of like, well, yep, they're going to be cold behind the warm. Just keep it exactly how it is right now. Again, interesting situation right here. The border cross points between the two, there's a lot of them. They're friendly. They work. It exists. But it's just one of those interesting points until we reach, by the way, the Hungarian, Serbian, and Romanian tri point, which again, is the one you can actually go visit. Even though all three countries have very separate, like, you know, visa policies and stuff like that. So you generally can't go from one to the other. There, as you can see, there is a trade point between the three of them, and you can technically have a foot in each of the three countries very, very easily. So yeah, if you're in Romania, there's a thing you could try. Their border actually looks really weird because the Romanian Serbian border at this point, for the most part, this northern part of the border actually follows, you know, the borders of Vojvodina, because the rest of the Hungarian-Serbian border, it looks like it's a really weird one. Like, seriously, look at this on the map. It looks really, really weird. Like, it's got a weird, like, arm coming off like this. But the truth is, it's one of the most natural, easy-to-follow borders in the world because the majority of it follows the Danube River. So here you can see, Danube River cuts right through Romania and Serbia, makes it easy for them. Like, guess what? You own that side, I own this side. Easy stuff. Like, crossing it, it's mostly tricky in places. You know, the border, it's actually, like, clean. Doesn't seem to have any crossed over lands. It's a perfect border. But the truth is when you get to Vojvodina, which is the northern part of Serbia, you get a very interesting situation indeed. So yeah, Vojvodina, this part of Serbia right here, is actually a very, very different place of Serbia than the rest because basically the long story short is it like has a different history. It has like a, it's a confusing thing that this map can explain, I guess, a bit. So there's a lot of Hungarians there. There's a lot of Romanians there. The pink bits are Romanian territories. Serbians are blue, of course, so they're still the majority by like over a decent amount of percent. But there used to be a lot of Germans there. There used to be a lot of Croatians there. That's basically this map kind of just says how like, oh, yeah, so Vojvodina, one of those, you know, like it's a bit of a, wait, a clustercluck, if you will. So yeah, basically, this whole area, just a mess that you can, I don't know, like it's an ethnic area that like you can see how like things get really tricky here. So the border here is just really, really complex and filled with these holes like, oh yeah, well that's Serbian land, that's, you know, Vojvodina land, this is Romania land, and yeah, this is one of the trickier borders. Again, it's not less, it's the one thing today where they fixed their relations, they've made it all good. But it's still the very tricky issue where you can see on the map where like, oh yeah, very clearly one country ends and one country begins. And I find that's, I think it's always fascinating when you can see that in a country where just looking at the map you can see fairly clearly, it's actually not quite so clear here, but you can see in most parts, like, where, like, oh yeah, well, one country has different policies, leading to, like, smaller farms as opposed to the huge farms, so you can see just where one country ends and begins, just by looking at, like, again, the field map, like, oh yeah, it goes around like this. And yeah, I find that fascinating, maybe you too do, maybe you don't at all, and you're just like, why is that even a thing? But yeah, so, technically, Romania just borders Serbia here, but in my opinion, it borders, like, two countries, because Vojvodina, it, like, used to be autonomous in the same way Kosovo was before that whole thing. You know, we're not talking about Kosovo. If you're Serbian and you're watching this, we're not talking about Kosovo. Chill. Don't, that comment where you're typing Kosovo is it's not relevant. Don't worry. Chill, Serbians, chill. There's a lot of angry Serbians who watch every one of these videos just to leave that comment. It's not about Kosovo. That's like doesn't border Romania. So anyway, basically, it essentially borders two parts of Serbia. Serbia the main, and Vojvodina has like a lot of autonomous privileges. Not including border controls, but it essentially makes it a different place. And again, it had the same autonomy that Kosovo had before that whole thing. And yeah, interesting little thing about the Romanian and Serbian border. It's kind of like two separate things: the easy border and then the hard border. The hard border kind of borders a different part of Vojvodina, of Serbia, which is known as Vojvodina, where the capital is Novi Sad. So there you go, fun fact. I want to make a whole video about that sometime, but like, you know, weird, vague, autonomous regions of Yugoslav provinces. I'm sure that's not top-notch video content. So yeah, let's move on next to talk about the Romanian-Bulgarian border. Again, really easy one to follow. Makes it quite friendly, in fact, because it just follows the Danube most of the way around. So you can see there's the Danube River. There's their border, works perfectly, even though it goes in and out in a few weird places where it gives this island to Bulgaria, then gives like these islands to Romania. It's just one of those weird things, but like, okay, that's fine, it's just their border. And then, oh, guess what, it goes through here for some unknown reason. So yeah, that means that you have the weird situation where this land on the other side of the, again, it's a huge river, we're talking. Actually, let's measure it across at this exact point. So we're talking a river which is a kilometer across, basically. That's a huge river, a kilometer. Like, imagine a kilometer for non-metric people, so Liberians and Americans. We're talking like most of a mile across the river right there. It's, if we go like right here, it's a mile across basically. So yeah, we've got like a river that's almost a mile or a kilometer across, and there's no proper way to access that from the rest of Bulgaria. And given that it is just like a forest, it doesn't really matter. But Bulgarians, they claim it anyway, so whatever, that's fine. And again, follows the Danube mostly, and when the Danube splits up, they just seem to, the Danube? I say Danube, but I know it's Danube, but Danube is just so much nicer, right? But anyway, the Danube River, it follows that, it makes a few weird decisions one way or the other, until it reaches this point right here. Because again, instead of following the Danube, which again, already made up the border with Serbia, already made up the border with Bulgaria, then goes like through Romania, so it's a Romania to Romania border, then it makes up like a little bit of the Moldovan border, and then it's the Ukrainian one. So again, 4 of the countries bordered by that. But yeah, after some point, the Danube River stops being the key point, and it instead cuts through Bulgaria at a point like this. So funny enough, again, when Romania was Greater Romania, it actually controlled way more of what is modern day Bulgaria, including as far south as the city of Dobruch, which is the 8th biggest city in Bulgaria. So yeah, one of the largest cities in Bulgaria used to be Romanian because all of this used to be theirs. But again, they had some issues, World War II, blah, 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 and it basically meant that a lot of their territory has gone back to this point. So the long story short, how they decided that is they just took back a lot of the territory that was gained during the Greater Romania times and kind of stripped them back to the, you know, the pre-1918 days, which again, I find to be quite fascinating. And you know, the fact that like so much of their land, again, this territory right here, you were Bulgarian, then you were Romanian, then you were Bulgarian again, and you know, there's like a day in the city where they celebrate when they became Bulgarian for the second time. And again, it's just weird stuff basically is what you get when you get borders, which changes frequently, especially near the edges where it's like, wait a minute, so like we were Bulgarian, but we should be Bulgarian, but we're not again. And it just leads to this weird situation where they just have some generic straight lines that don't go through population centers, and it just doesn't really cause issues. Like besides right here where you can imagine where like the town, you know, the growth of the town is cut off by the size of it. Like you can see how they're using the full length of the border they have, but you know, once the border's there, what can they really do about it? So you can see like very clearly high population density. Oh yeah, then there's the border with you know, Romania, and we can't have houses there. So instead it just kind of stops. It's just interesting stuff that you get when you have a, you know, because some cities which are bound by geographic constraints like a river obviously have to build in a certain way, but this city is constrained by the idea of a border with Romania, where the land is Romanian, so instead they have to build the city in a very, very, very weird shape, which you don't normally see unless you have a border that looks like that. Again, it's not the land, it's just that the border looks like that because reasons. So yeah, fun fact, that means that this part of the border is Romanian, and you cross the border here if you want to take a ferry instead of on the ferry, so makes things easier maybe. I'm not even sure if there's any benefits to this, but it's just one of those interesting things. And yeah, that's the only real town that's cut off besides the Romanian beach right here, where there's a beach which is half Bulgarian and half Romanian. Do you want to go to the beach? Well, you could go to a beach where you can cross from one to the other. So yeah, again, same thing with, by the way, with Romania and Bulgaria, where technically you have to go through border crossings, but not really. But yeah, basically my point, there are all the borders between Romania and its neighbors. The long story short of Romania is that it likes all of its neighbors. It tries very hard to help all of its neighbors. It gets them all into different organizations. You know, it helped Bulgaria out. It's trying to help out Moldova but again, whole thing there. And I think that's one of the tips to be successful. If every country just does the same thing, where we're like, let's just all try and be friends and let's get rich together. I mean, I'm just saying, would be a successful model for the world. Maybe it's not though. Maybe that's just me, liking the Romanian system, liking the way it went. Maybe this is just the one, successful example. But I think it's pretty cool. And the final thing I want to mention before we go here, because I just found this to be quite interesting, is that before Romania joined the EU, it was in something called the Central European Trade Area. It's called the CEFTA, kind of like NAFTA, or the other one, the Pan-Pacific. There's a North Atlantic Trade Treaty. There's something like that. But anyway, my point being is the treaty that Romania left, kind of left the organization behind it, which looks like, oh, sorry, this is definitely the wrong one. It made it look like this. So here's the map of the CEFTA, and it just kind of cut off Moldova, and it makes the map look so sad. Without Romania and without Bulgaria, the CEFTA, the Free Trade Agreement, which is kind of designed to increase free trade, it just looks so sad. And I'm just saying, I mean, good on you, Romania, for leaving it, but it sucks for everyone else a little bit, right? Something's missing there. Anyway, with that said, I think that's all I can really say about Romania for today. I think the capital, by the way, Bucharest, one of the largest cities in Europe, the 6th largest. You should go check it out. It's very modern, and they have some of the fastest internet speeds in the world. I was considering living there for a serious amount of time. Guess what? I do instant stuff. All I need is a blue box, and I can record videos, right? I'll go record them in Bucharest. But the reason I didn't is because I just decided against it in the end. I guess I like living in the UK. But if you want to go live in a country that speaks arguably better English than you, and you like fast internet, then you can go to Bucharest, where a lot of, again, this isn't even border stuff, but I really want to tell someone about this. They have really, really, really fast internet, which means that a lot of cam girls, people who do internet adult services perhaps, come and live in Bucharest in these huge flats they rent, where they'll rent you a room and they're just high-speed internet, utilities, have it for some low price a month. So yeah, a lot of the world's e-girls live in Bucharest. So have you ever fallen in love with a cam girl? Go move to Bucharest and you might find her on the street. Don't do that. That's probably creepy. But I mean, if you wanted to, you could. So thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I guess I'll see you all next time. The next border I want to cover, by the way, just sarcastically, is New Zealand. So look forward to a New Zealand border video where I just look at the islands and say, NA. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.